Aluminum offers several advantages when used in residential electrical wiring. One key factor is lower cost. Aluminum is generally cheaper than copper, sometimes significantly so. This price difference can result in considerable savings, especially in larger wiring projects within a home. Another advantage is its lighter weight. Aluminum is much lighter than copper, making it easier to handle during installation. This is particularly helpful when working in confined spaces or when running wires overhead. Aluminum also exhibits good corrosion resistance. It naturally forms a thin oxide layer on its surface, which protects it from corrosion. This makes it suitable for use in damp or outdoor locations where copper might be more susceptible to corrosion. In terms of electrical conductivity, aluminum is highly conductive, though not quite as conductive as copper. However, for most residential applications, the difference in conductivity is minimal and does not significantly impact performance. Aluminum is also more flexible and easier to bend than copper. This flexibility is advantageous when working with tight corners or intricate wiring layouts, simplifying the installation process. When properly installed and maintained, aluminum wiring can have a long lifespan, comparable to that of copper wiring, often lasting for decades. Aluminum is particularly well suited for specific applications within residential settings. These include branch circuits, which are the circuits that supply power to individual outlets, and lights, feeders to individual appliances or equipment, such as air conditioners or water heaters, overhead service drops, which are the wires that run from utility poles to homes, and grounding conductors, which provide a path for electrical faults to safely return to the source. It is crucial to consult with a qualified electrician before deciding to use aluminum wiring in any residential application. While aluminum offers advantages in certain situations, it is not appropriate for every wiring purpose. There are specific considerations that need to be taken into account to ensure safe and reliable electrical connections. The first consideration involves proper installation techniques. Aluminum wiring requires specific connectors and installation methods to prevent loosening and oxidation at connection points. These connectors are typically made of materials compatible with aluminum and are designed to maintain a secure connection over time. Secondly, antioxidant compounds are often used to prevent oxidation at connection points. Oxidation can increase resistance and lead to overheating, so using these compounds helps ensure a stable and safe connection. Thirdly, regular inspection is recommended. Periodic inspections of aluminum wiring connections are important to identify and address any potential issues, such as loose connections or corrosion. Addressing these issues promptly can prevent more serious problems from developing. Fourthly, compatibility with devices is something to keep in mind. Not all electrical devices are compatible with aluminum wiring. It's important to use devices that are specifically listed for use with aluminum wiring to avoid potential problems. Fifthly, ampacity is a factor. Aluminum wiring has a lower ampacity than copper wiring of the same size. This means that aluminum wiring can carry less current than copper wiring of the same gauge. It's essential to use the correct size aluminum wiring for the intended load to prevent overheating. Sixthly, the National Electrical Code (NEC) provides guidelines for the safe installation of aluminum wiring. Following these guidelines is crucial for ensuring compliance with safety standards and preventing electrical hazards. Branch circuits are the circuits that extend from the main electrical panel to individual outlets, lights, and other electrical devices throughout the house. Aluminum wiring can be used for branch circuits in residential dwellings, but it's important to follow specific guidelines to ensure safe and reliable connections. When using aluminum wiring for branch circuits, it's crucial to use connectors that are specifically designed for use with aluminum wiring. These connectors are typically made of materials that are compatible with aluminum and are designed to prevent corrosion and loosening over time. It's also important to apply an antioxidant compound to the aluminum wiring before making the connection. This compound helps to prevent oxidation, which can increase resistance and lead to overheating. The size of the aluminum wiring must be appropriate for the load it will be carrying. Aluminum wiring has a lower ampacity than copper wiring of the same size, so it's important to use a larger gauge aluminum wire to carry the same amount of current as a smaller gauge copper wire. For example, a 15-amp circuit typically requires a 14-gauge copper wire or a 12-gauge aluminum wire. A 20-amp circuit typically requires a 12-gauge copper wire or a 10-gauge aluminum wire. Feeders are the circuits that supply power from the main electrical panel to subpanels or individual appliances or equipment. Aluminum wiring can be used for feeders to individual appliances or equipment, but it's important to follow specific guidelines to ensure safe and reliable connections. When using aluminum wiring for feeders, it's crucial to use connectors that are specifically designed for use with aluminum wiring. These connectors are typically made of materials that are compatible with aluminum and are designed to prevent corrosion and loosening over time. It's also important to apply an antioxidant compound to the aluminum wiring before making the connection. This compound helps to prevent oxidation, which can increase resistance and lead to overheating. The size of the aluminum wiring must be appropriate for the load it will be carrying. Aluminum wiring has a lower ampacity than copper wiring of the same size, so it's important to use a larger gauge aluminum wire to carry the same amount of current as a smaller gauge copper wire. For example, a feeder to a 30-amp appliance typically requires a 10-gauge copper wire or an 8-gauge aluminum wire. A feeder to a 50-amp appliance typically requires a 6-gauge copper wire or a 4-gauge aluminum wire. Overhead service drops are the wires that run from utility poles to homes, providing the main electrical supply to the building. Aluminum wiring is often used for overhead service drops because it is lightweight and corrosion resistant. When using aluminum wiring for overhead service drops, it's important to ensure that the connections at both ends of the wire are properly made and protected from the elements. The wires must be securely attached to the utility pole and to the service entrance equipment on the building. It's also important to ensure that the wires are properly insulated and protected from physical damage. Grounding conductors provide a path for electrical faults to safely return to the source, helping to prevent electrical shock and fire hazards. Aluminum wiring can be used for grounding conductors, but it's important to follow specific guidelines to ensure safe and reliable connections. When using aluminum wiring for grounding conductors, it's crucial to use connectors that are specifically designed for use with aluminum wiring. These connectors are typically made of materials that are compatible with aluminum and are designed to prevent corrosion and loosening over time. It's also important to ensure that the grounding conductors are properly connected to the grounding electrode system, which typically consists of ground rods or buried metal plates. The size of the grounding conductors must be appropriate for the size of the service. The National Electrical Code (NEC) provides guidelines for the proper sizing of grounding conductors. Aluminum wiring offers several benefits for residential electrical applications, including lower cost, lighter weight, and corrosion resistance. However, it's important to follow specific guidelines for installation and maintenance to ensure safe and reliable connections. Consulting with a qualified electrician is essential before using aluminum wiring in any application. Aluminum wiring has a different coefficient of thermal expansion than copper wiring, which means that it expands and contracts at a different rate when heated and cooled. This difference in thermal expansion can cause connections to loosen over time, leading to increased resistance and potential overheating. To prevent this, it's important to use connectors that are specifically designed for use with aluminum wiring. These connectors are typically made of materials that are compatible with aluminum and are designed to maintain a secure connection even when the wiring expands and contracts. Aluminum wiring is more susceptible to oxidation than copper wiring. Oxidation is a chemical reaction that occurs when aluminum is exposed to air, forming a layer of aluminum oxide on the surface of the wire. This layer of aluminum oxide is a poor conductor of electricity, which can increase resistance and lead to overheating. To prevent oxidation, it's important to apply an antioxidant compound to the aluminum wiring before making the connection. This compound helps to prevent the formation of aluminum oxide and ensures a good electrical connection. Aluminum wiring is not as strong as copper wiring, which means that it is more easily damaged by physical stress. To protect aluminum wiring from physical damage, it's important to use proper installation techniques and to avoid bending or kinking the wiring. It's also important to protect the wiring from exposure to moisture and chemicals, which can corrode the aluminum and weaken it. When working with aluminum wiring, it's important to use the proper tools and equipment. Using the wrong tools can damage the wiring or make it difficult to make a good connection. For example, it's important to use a torque wrench to tighten connectors to the proper torque. Over-tightening connectors can damage the wiring, while under-tightening connectors can lead to loose connections. It's also important to use wire strippers that are specifically designed for use with aluminum wiring. Wire strippers that are designed for use with copper wiring can damage the aluminum wiring, making it more susceptible to oxidation and corrosion. The National Electrical Code, NEC, contains specific requirements for the installation of aluminum wiring. These requirements are designed to ensure that aluminum wiring is installed safely and reliably. It's important to be familiar with these requirements before working with aluminum wiring. Some of the key requirements in the NEC include the use of connectors that are listed for use with aluminum wiring, the application of an antioxidant compound to the aluminum wiring before making the connection, and the proper sizing of the aluminum wiring for the intended load. It's also important to follow the NEC requirements for the grounding of aluminum wiring. Proper grounding is essential for preventing electrical shock and fire hazards. In addition to following the NEC requirements, it's also important to follow the manufacturer's instructions for the installation of aluminum wiring. The manufacturer's instructions may provide additional details and recommendations that are not covered in the NEC. Following the manufacturer's instructions can help to ensure that the aluminum wiring is installed correctly and safely. There are several common mistakes that people make when working with aluminum wiring. One common mistake is using connectors that are not listed for use with aluminum wiring. Another common mistake is failing to apply an antioxidant compound to the aluminum wiring before making the connection. A third common mistake is over-tightening or under-tightening connectors. A fourth common mistake is damaging the aluminum wiring by bending or kinking it. Avoiding these common mistakes can help to ensure that aluminum wiring is installed safely and reliably. If you are not comfortable working with aluminum wiring, it's best to hire a qualified electrician. A qualified electrician will have the knowledge, skills, and experience to install aluminum wiring safely and correctly. Hiring a qualified electrician can help to prevent electrical shock and fire hazards. Aluminum wiring offers several advantages for residential electrical applications, but it's important to follow specific guidelines for installation and maintenance to ensure safe and reliable connections. Consulting with a qualified electrician is essential before using aluminum wiring in any application. Consider NEC Table 310.15 B16 for ampacity of conductors. Also consider NEC Section 110.14 regarding termination temperature ratings.